What is up? Welcome to the episode. Today we are talking about Ozempic, or Wegovy, semaglutide, or semaglutide, depending on how you pronounce it, tirzepatide. These drugs have a number of different names, and honestly, I have been a bit hesitant to even put together an episode on this topic because I really don't want to bring any more attention to it. However, I've had more and more folks asking me about this stuff, and so here we are. Originally, these drugs were created to help control blood sugar in type 2 diabetics, which, by the way, is a 100% lifestyle-based disease, meaning folks acquire type 2 diabetes via their funky nutrition, movement, and sleep habits. And fortunately, it is reversible in most, if not all cases, via solid nutrition, movement, and sleep habits. Now, Ozempic is what's called a GLP-1 receptor agonist. And GLP stands for glucagon-like peptide. And we actually produce glucagon in our bodies naturally, in the gut specifically. However, these drugs are typically administered via an injection, and obviously in much larger amounts than what we would naturally produce. How do they work? Or in other words, how do folks lose fat via taking them? They do a number of different things. However, the main mechanism is that they reduce appetite in a dose-dependent fashion. Meaning, if you take a very small amount of the drug, you get a small appetite blunting effect. And as you scale up the dose, the more and more the appetite gets suppressed. Now, how do they suppress appetite? This is where things get really interesting. They actually slow down digestion, quite literally. They slow the actual movement of food from your stomach to the small intestine, which means that you feel more full for longer and therefore eat fewer calories. And as you know, a calorie deficit is required for fat loss in every single instance without exception. So it's not like you eat the same amount of food that you normally eat and just lose weight. No. You take the drug, appetite is suppressed, you consume fewer calories because you feel full, and you lose fat as a result. Oh, and by the way, if you try to eat what you normally would portion-wise, you're almost certainly going to feel sick. I'm talking nausea, acid reflux, vomiting. More on that in a second. Now, you hear me say it all the time. There is no free lunch in biology. And so what are some of the side effects associated with these drugs? First of all, it's important to mention that there is no such thing as a side effect. There are only effects. The pharmaceutical industry came up with the word side effect to describe effects that are undesirable. So make no mistake, even though the things that I'm about to mention don't happen in every single instance, in every single person to the same degree, they are effects of the drug itself. Because it's like saying that a hangover is a side effect of drinking too much alcohol. No, a hangover is an effect of drinking too much alcohol. It's just what the drug does. Folks get varying levels of hangover-like symptoms depending on the individual and how much they drink, but we can't pretend that feeling like shit after drinking too much is a side effect. It is an effect. It's baked into the cake of ingesting booze. Okay, so undesirable effects of these drugs include constipation, diarrhea, nausea, stomach pain, vomiting, pancreatitis, gallbladder issues, kidney damage, thyroid tumors, pancreatic tumors, and you guessed it, cancer. We don't want any of those things, and this is yet another example of how you cannot trick the body. It's simply too smart. Those effects are listed on the Ozempic website, by the way. And drug companies have to list this stuff for legal purposes. So if you're thinking about taking any drug or medication, for the love of God, look up the potential undesirable effects first, because they can often be worse than what you're taking the drug for to begin with. Now, humans really like to think that we can develop a drug, take said drug, and only impact one single thing. In this case, body weight. And that's just not how physiology works. The body is like dominoes in the sense that when we knock one block down, it takes a whole bunch of other blocks down with it, for better or for worse. An example of better would be all of the awesome things that happen when we eat well, move a bunch, and get great sleep. There is a cascade of processes that happen when we do said things that benefit our physiology as a whole. Now, we just talked about some of the short-term issues with Ozempic. What about some of the long-term considerations? The most obvious one is rebound weight gain, or in other words, when folks stop taking this drug, the vast majority of them regain the weight. Shocker, right? Their appetite comes back with a vengeance. They most likely didn't learn a ton about implementing a healthy lifestyle, and boom, they're back to square one. Now, someone might say, well, what if they just stay on the drug permanently? One, what if there are supply chain issues for whatever reason? Two, it's extremely expensive, but to be fair, the cost will go down assuming that production continues to ramp up. However, the third consideration is the most pertinent in my opinion. The longer that you take any drug, and therefore the more of it that you put in your body, the more likely you are to create complications and experience undesirable effects. And this is a wild stat that I just came across the other day, and it is, in the last 10 years, there have been 14,000 drugs that have been taken off the market. Meaning, the FDA approves a whole bunch of drugs, but each year for the last 10 years on average, 1,400 of those are recalled and taken off the market. Now, I'm not saying that this is necessarily going to happen with these specific drugs, but it is possible. And man, 14,000 drugs in 10 years, that is a big number. And the truth is, we don't have long-term data on these weight loss drugs, plain and simple. Another medium to long-term issue is the risk for nutrient deficiencies. And this is because if your appetite is reduced like crazy, you are going to eat less. And if you eat less, it's actually exponentially more important to eat really high quality food because your body needs what it needs in terms of protein, fat, vitamins, minerals, etc. And so it's crucial to make those calories count when you are working with fewer total calories. But the kicker is, what is the mindset of a typical individual that is going to follow through on taking a weight loss drug like this? It's almost certainly going to be someone that doesn't eat healthfully. And so sure, they're going to eat less unhealthy food, but they're also going to put themselves at a higher risk for nutrient deficiencies. These aren't the people that are eating single ingredient whole foods and emphasizing high quality animal protein, because if they were, they wouldn't have a weight issue to begin with. Now, are there people that may actually be good candidates for a weight loss drug like this? Potentially under the following conditions. They are overweight, diabetic, unwilling to change their habits, and decide that the potential risks of taking said drugs are outweighed by the potential benefits. Would I take one of these drugs, or would I want one of my clients to take one of these drugs? No and no. If you're interested in applying for one-on-one nutritional coaching and or workout design with me, you can click the link in the description below or head on over to n1fitness.com/coaching. Feel free to follow me on Instagram at N1Fitness, on TikTok at the N1Fitness, and on YouTube at Marcus Sadu /N1Fitness. If you'd like to stay up to date on the newest episode releases, you can hit the subscribe button. Thanks so much for tuning in. I hope that you found this episode useful, and I will catch you on the next one. See ya!